There's been no shortage of content from The Mandalorian in the 6 years since its debut, but there is still one scene from 5 years ago that was withheld by Star Wars, and we still haven't seen it to this day. Deleted scenes are nothing new to the franchise, as every single Star Wars trilogy, beginning with the original, all have their own collection of scenes that ultimately didn't make it into the final cut. They've gained their own legacies in retrospect, and some of them have even been canonized in other ways. When it comes to projects like The Mandalorian, however, deleted scenes don't seem to be as common, or, at least, as widely shared. In fact, there aren't many deleted scenes that we know of at all, aside from one. Taking place in The Mandalorian Season 2, we have evidence that this one particular scene was filmed but ultimately withheld from the final cut, though half a decade later, it still has not been released everything we know about The Mandalorian Season 2's deleted scene. It took place on Navarro. The behind-the-scenes special of The Mandalorian, housed in Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian Season 2, reveals that there was another scene filmed on Navarro at the end of Episode 6, Chapter 14, The Tragedy. The scene focused on Carl Weathers' Greef Karga greeting Din Djarin, Boba Fett, and Fennec Shand prior to Mando approaching Cara Dune with the request to free Migs Mayfeld. Footage from Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian clearly shows Weathers' Greef speaking with this trio of allies, but this scene has still never been released, not even on The Mandalorian Saison 2's physical editions. Why Star Wars ultimately decided to cut this scene on Navarro? Redundancy and editing troubles. Navarro port and overlook of the town in The Mandalorian Season 3. Admittedly, it's easy to tell from the above description why this scene may not have been included, although there must have been more to it than saving runtime. It seems rather insignificant, perhaps redundant in a way, as Din stops to talk to Greef and then Cara, but The Tragedy still has the runtime for it. That episode remains one of the shortest of The Mandalorian Season 2 as a whole, which means this couldn't have been the sole motivation behind cutting this scene. Potential redundancy aside, why did Star Wars choose to cut this particular moment? One possibility is that there was an error made in this scene that wasn't caught until it was too late, and reshoots weren't possible. The Mandalorian Season 2's principal photography ended right before the COVID-19 lockdowns began, which made reshoots nearly, if not completely, impossible in this particular season. This is why some simple editing mistakes in this season are completely unavoidable, such as one instance where Din Djarin's shoulder armor is completely messed up in the Season 2 premiere. There may have been a more severe error in this scene that led to it ultimately being cut. It's time that we get to see this deleted Mandalorian scene. Many of the actors in this scene ought to be seen again. Whatever motivation was behind the decision to cut this deleted scene from The Mandalorian Season 2, it's time that Star Wars releases it, for one important reason: Carl Weathers himself. It's been just over a year since the actor's tragic passing, which means that any new looks at his incredible performance as Greef Karga are immensely treasured. If there's another scene out there of Weathers as Karga, it deserves to be seen, especially if the contents of this scene are now even more inconsequential for the overall story in retrospect. Beyond just memorializing Weathers' performance, however, there is also the matter of paying due justice to both Temuera Morrison and Ming-Na Wen, particularly the former. Morrison had the chance to lead his own Star Wars series with the Book of Boba Fett, though this TV show became more notorious for Din Djarin taking over it halfway through than anything else. Whatever participation he may have had in this scene, it deserves to be seen, if only to prove just how important Morrison's Boba Fett really is in this galaxy. I doubt this is the only deleted scene from The Mandalorian that exists, but as of now, it's the only one we have tangible evidence of, aside from actors' testimonies of specific moments and shots that were ultimately not included in the final cut. The Mandalorian has become such a cultural phenomenon, and a key part of Star Wars, that this deleted scene and any others would quickly become just as important to the fandom. Who knows if The Mandalorian will ever let these scenes see the light of day, but I'm achingly curious to at least see this one.